How many economic problems are we going to see which exceed anything that has ever happened in history before the public wakes up to what's actually going on here? Not only is the bond market in complete disarray, but business bankruptcies are up 54% in the last month. Corporate debt defaults have increased 176% in the same period. And we are now witnessing the longest yield curve inversion ever in recorded history. The yield curve alone has signaled the last 8 recessions. But when you combine this data with the fact that our central bank has completely lost its credibility with the markets, and gold is at a triple top in the last 3 years, which is extremely rare, it's best not to ignore the writing on the wall. We are all living and witnessing economic history unfold. And there are only a few ways that this can go from here. And you need to be prepared for all of them. Coming up. I'm Lynette Zang, Chief Market Analyst here at ITM Trading, a full-service physical gold and silver dealer, really specializing in custom strategies. And if you don't have one in place right now, click that calendar link below and set up a time to talk, because you got to have a strategy. The markets are falling apart. Even though it doesn't seem like it, let me show you what I'm talking about. I mean, this is really serious, you guys. The bond market has never sounded recession alarms for this long. So what are we hearing? A soft landing. Gosh, we might just avoid a recession altogether. Doesn't that? And the consumer continues to be so strong. This is the garbage that they're feeding us. But how many times can you be lied to when you do not know the truth? This is the truth. What I'm telling you today is the truth, and it has me very unnerved, and I'll show you why in a minute. Bear with me, okay? Such an inversion telegraphed the last 8 recessions, and on Thursday, the market surpassed the 1980 record to hold that way for the longest consecutive daily stretch since Bloomberg's records began in 1962. Can you tell me what was happening in 1980? We were transitioning into a debt-based system. Real simple. So the indicators are flashing. They want you to think this time is different when it's worse than it was back in the 80s, to be honest with you. Look at all of the data. Bond traders bet on nirvana in new decoding of the yield curve. This time ain't different, guys. It's not different. Actually, it's worse. It's way worse, because we are at the end of this currency's life cycle. But recession signal from yield curve may not work, the ECB says. Oh, good. Do you trust them? Do you think that they have your best interests at heart? Can you believe them? Because it is their job to keep you in these fiat money garbage markets. That's their job, to keep you calm and keep you in position that makes it easy for them to steal your wealth. Not okay with me. Ignore the signal at your own risk. I don't want anybody watching this video. I don't want anybody that's not watching this video to ignore the signals that we are given, because there's no recovering. If you miss these signals, there's no recovery if you lose all your principal. If you can maintain some principal, you can fight back another day. If you lose it, you have nothing to work with. El Arian warns of massive corporate refinancing next year. Okay, little reminder. I know I do this. Forgive me if I'm being redundant. I just really want you to get it. Interest rates, market value of the bonds. So what had been happening for 30 years was interest rates were going down, principal value going up. which also means that if there were bonds that were defaulting, if you had like an ETF or a mutual fund of bonds or something like that, and a bond defaulted because the prices were going up because they kept pushing yields down, you didn't notice it. We are not in Kansas anymore. What's been happening over the last, 14, 16 months is that yields have been going up really steeply. That means the principal value of the bonds are going down. So when these corporate bonds or government bonds or any bonds default, you won't have that to cover it up. It's going to be like the tide going out and you see all the garbage. And we are going to see a lot of garbage. And not in the future. I mean, it's really happening right now. If you look at high yield equals junk. If you look at high yield, if you look at commercial real estate, there's massive refinancing needs next year. Massive. So that's the point of pain which starts to happen. Okay, when? Okay, L.Arian is telling you next year, and we're almost in October already. There are things that have to be refinanced in this economy that cannot be refinanced in an orderly fashion at these rates. In other words, we are all about to see massive amounts of volatility. Are we in the eye before the storm? I don't know, but take advantage of this opportunity to get yourself prepared. Click that Calendly link. If you don't have a plan, get it in place and start to execute it. Okay, this is the corporate debt wall that we're coming into. Let's see. In 2023, there's all this year, about $525 billion had to be rolled over. 2024, $790 billion. 2025, $1.07 trillion. Okay? Can you see this wall? And then it goes on from there, but I don't frankly think we're going to make it much past there, which is why I didn't bother to do the rest of it. But, the Fed is doggedly determined to stay the course because they're fighting for their credibility. This is happening all over the world, that central banks, having handed their credibility away in June of 2022, are now fighting to get it back. That puts us in such a dangerous position because I don't think they see, right? Or they're ready for this next crisis. That's what this means. I don't think they're trying to kick the can down the road forever. I think that they only need to kick the can down the road until they feel ready for this next crisis. So what we could be experiencing right now, especially with their dogged determination to keep interest rates higher for longer, is that they're setting up the crisis that they know that they are creating. I don't know if the Fed is going to pivot, but even if it does, they're between a rock and a hard place. I've shown you that for years. Business bankruptcies soar in August as rising interest rates bite. Yep. U.S. corporate debt default surge 176%. This is ultimately going to feed into that 54% increase for restructuring, so bankruptcies. This 176%, not all of that has fed into it yet. Are you ready for it? Is the Fed ready for it? Is anybody ready for it? Because frankly, as many as 69 firms missed debt payments during the January to August stretch. That's up from 25 year over year. Houston, we got a problem. So instead, and let's be honest about it. The Fed created this problem by pushing interest rates down to zero and holding them there for 15 years? And they got a problem too that I'm going to be talking about. Fed's higher for longer mantra has doubters in the bond market. So I want you to think about what that title means, because this is a con game and it requires confidence. And so they have the markets doubting them. The mantra used to be don't fight the Fed. Now all we hear is that there's doubt. Well, yeah, they handed it away. Not very smart in my position. You might recall that I was kind of freaked out when they did that. But now they're clawing back. They're trying to get their credibility again. Sticky inflation would make it very difficult for the Fed to ease next year. So does that mean that they have to raise the rates even more, or they have to keep them up longer? That's the rock. Here's the hard place. The longer rates stay elevated, so does the risk of a downturn. And at the margin, there are more signs of consumer stress as higher borrowing costs and weaker hiring start to erode household spending. I'm sure the $1 trillion in credit card debt has also something to do with that, because banks are going to put, if they haven't already, more limitations on credit and debt. And if you're a commercial borrower and you need to roll over that debt, you're going to the bank and they're not willing to just roll the whole sum over. Maybe they'll give you nothing. Maybe they'll give you a little bit, and you got to come up with the difference where? I mean, it used to be the Fed's printing press that could do that really easily. Not so much anymore. So it doesn't matter. They are damned if they do, and they are damned if they don't. And unfortunately, we are all in the pathway of this debacle. Are you ready for it? I hope so. Food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. These are the things that everyone needs in order to have a reasonable standard of living. If you don't get them in place now, you may not have the opportunity in the future. In fact, I can pretty much guarantee you won't have that opportunity in the future. You got to execute your strategy. If you don't have one in place, get one in place and execute it. Because this is happening all around the world. There's no place to hide other than physical gold and silver and food, water, community. And I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later. But the whole world adapts to the Fed's rate order in 36-hour sequence. So the U.S. Central Bank will kick off a round of policy decisions, but then we have Bank of England, the Swiss National Bank, Norges Bank, and Reich Bank may all raise rates. So the whole world is following the Fed off a flippin' cliff. Do you really, really think that this isn't a setup? And the big question is, will you follow them off that cliff too? Because I'm suggesting parachutes when we go over that cliff. Nobody, I don't care how wealthy you think you are, nobody is going to get through this unscathed. How comfortable do you want to be, and do you want your family to be going through this? And what kind of condition do you want to be on the other side of this? Because there is always opportunity in crisis. Always. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Wealth never disappears. It simply shifts location. Have it shift your way. Now, let me show you what's scaring the crap out of me. And it should scare the crap out of you as well. Sub 50-cent price on Treasury bond? That doesn't just underscore investor pain. That is the freaking foundation of the global markets. Here you go. Interest rates up, principal values down. The Treasury market, we have been told our whole lives, the safest, most liquid in the world. But we already saw issues with liquidity occurring in 2015. And they've only gotten worse and worse and worse. And what that tells you, what a sub 50 cent, that means these bonds were issued, with interest rates at zero, right? What that tells you is that the bond that was issued, these were issued at 98 cents because you always have to be at market. Bonds must always be at market. So this is when they're issued, and then the longer the maturity, you can see it. the greater the volatility, right? So these, I think, are 30-year bonds. Yeah, these are 30-year bonds, and they have fallen more than 40% from their peak thanks to the Fed rate hikes. And the Fed knows this. They know this even better than I do. You're going to follow them off the cliff? I have said all along, while people think that all they want to do is kick the can down the road, I'm not so sure. Because there's virtually no purchasing power left in the currency, we need to shift into a new system. It really is just that simple. Well, how do you make that shift and get people to go along? Create a crisis. Save me, Mr. Bill, save me. For those who are old enough to remember that little thing. 50 cents on the dollar is a very low price in the world of bonds. In most cases, it signals that investors believe the seller of the debt is in such financial distress that it could default. So when a U.S. Treasury bond sank below that price Monday, it raised eyebrows. The security, due in May 2050, briefly touched as low as 49.29 over 32, marking the second time in the past 2 months it's fallen below 50 cents. I just want you to absorb what I just told you, because the US dollar is the world reserve currency. And its foundation, how do you generate this garbage? You create debt. Who's been buying all the debt? Well, let's face it. Central banks have been buying back their government's debt. That's what's enabled this to continue on. Why can't they do it and keep doing it? They'll do it until all confidence is lost. But this is what sends us into a hyperinflationary event, because they've already told us the way they're going to introduce the CBDC. Hey, you let us have this tool, there will never be any more inflation anymore. No, they will deflate and rob you of all your principal. They've gotten all your flipping purchasing power. Now they're going for principal. Give me a break. Who holds all this crap? Well, let's take a look. The Fed is the largest investor in the debt, holding about 19%, a legacy of its bond purchasing program known as quantitative easing. Other buy and hold investors, and this is the one that matters the most to you, as exchange traded funds, those are ETFs, people, pensions, and insurance companies also dominate. So how many times have I heard from people, oh, but they say it's insured? Yeah, read your annuity contract, read your insurance contract. This contract is only as good as the issuer. So if they can't pay you, guess what? Too bad, so sad. You take all the risk, they get all the gain, they get off scot-free, and you're left with nothing. Nothing. This should not be okay with you. And the 10-year Treasury hits the highest levels last seen in 2007, which is when the flipping system died. Gee, what are these signals trying to tell us? Will you open your eyes? Will you open your ears? Will you open your minds and get into position? We are running out of time. But hey, what else do we have going on anyway? What is a government shutdown? The government may be shut down by October 1st. Congress appears to be on track to trigger a government shutdown on October 1st, 2023, because it is not expected to pass the 12 appropriation bills that fund government operations before the start of the new fiscal year. So yeah, we could just avoid a recession entirely. Or maybe we we might have a soft landing. Or maybe all of that is a big, fat, flipping lie. And how many times can you be lied to when you do not know the truth? But you know the truth. You watch my videos, you know the truth. Do you know the truth by looking at the spot market? Oh, heck no. Because that is just a contract. That is just a paper market. And I've shown you many times how the physical market is significantly making new highs. And what do you got on the spot market? A triple top. Rare, very, very rare for you to see a triple top. And what is most likely to happen? Well, it's kind of like if I had a spring in my hand. We got to get me a spring. If I had a spring in my hand and I held it down and I put a lot of pressure on it, which they can easily do in the spot market because they can create as much gold that does not nor ever will exist. When I let go of that spring, the spring is going to shoot in a direction. If they had as much control as they want you to believe that they have, please tell me why spot gold isn't at $6, right? Why? Because there's a lot of pressure in all of these markets that is growing and growing and growing. And when this thing explodes, you better be in a position, because right now we're already seeing the premiums grow because demand has exceeded supply. You're not going to see that in this market. I have no idea the real amount of fictitious gold. I know what I saw at the Biz, but it's got to make that look like chump change. And when I was at the Biz, before I knew flipping print screen, unfortunately, for every 1 ounce of physical gold that exists, they created 62,000 ounces of digital intangible gold. Can that control the visible price that you see if it's just a contract market? Yes. So honestly, it is time to get prepared. Everybody's got to do what they're comfortable doing. But I'm telling you, this has scared the crap out of me. So if you have not yet, if you're not subscribed, hit the button and subscribe so you know what's going on. Click that Calendly link below, set up your time to talk to one of our specialists, and get your gold and silver strategy in place and get it executed. Because you've got to have the right gold and silver for all of your objectives. And also, I'm going to encourage you so much, if you haven't gone over and visited Beyond Gold and Silver, do so. That's where I talk about the rest of the mantra. Food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. But I also wanted to take a little bit of time to talk to you about my recent experience in Australia and New Zealand, because it was beyond amazing. The first event, I'm so grateful to Carrie Stevenson, who is the founder of the Australian Gold Conference and the host of Making Money Matter. I absolutely love and adore this woman, her energy, her attention to detail. I mean, it was a phenomenal, phenomenal event. And I am so grateful that she invited me to come and be there and participate in it. It kind of blew me away. Now, this, of course, was an event that was mostly geared toward mining companies. And there's a lot of really interesting things, honestly, that's happening on that front. But I also got to do some events with Daryl and Brian Paynes, and they are the president and chief executive officers of As Good as Gold Australia. And they did an evening with Lynette Zang. So I knew that most of the people there were there because they knew my work. And of course, I had prepared all my dog and pony stuff, and I did all of that. But yet, when I stood up there and I listened to Daryl speak, and I listened to Brian speak, and I listened to Tim speak, and he's going to be on my show. You got to know this guy. I mean, if you think I'm high energy, he makes me look slow. I got to say it, he really does. But, I was listening to them talk, and I realized that what I had prepared was frankly just more of the same. And, you can come to this channel 3 times a week and see all of the stuff that we're putting out. But I realized that the real reason for my trip anyway, and I knew this when I was with Carrie, but the real reason for my trip because I can't do any business over there, it's too far away, but you have beautiful people to do it without me. But I did it because I wanted to build global community. That's why I went. That's why I do interviews. And so that's what I talked about. And when I talked about it, I got chills. And I realized that this was really what I was supposed to be talking about. Because if we don't come together in community, we do not have a snowball's chance in Hades of overcoming their plan for us, which is not pretty. Now, me, I'm old. So, I only have maybe another 31 years on this planet because I think I'm going to make it to 100. But it matters for my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren and your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren and all the people that we don't even know that have children and it's our future. And they want to rob us of our future. And for me, that is not okay. This is what I have been born to do. But I'm asking you to join me, and I'm going to figure out, this is my commitment, and this is what I realized there. Because I know the biggest complaint from a lot of people is that, they try and tell their loved ones and their friends about what they say and see, and then the people just think that they're crazy. I promise you that I will figure out how to create like a 5-minute video, 5 minutes. And Randy's with me on this. We've already started to discuss it and see what it looks like. So I'm going to do this ASAP, that you can share with your families, your friends, and strangers, because you can probably get them to sit down and watch it for 5 minutes. And hopefully, because I think they're already partly there anyway, the veil will be lifted off their eyes and they'll be able to see at least enough of the truth to join us in community. Because a community is supposed to support each other. But we've seen, remember, we talked about how, the COVID lockdown in China and then the community banded together and they protested and that got lifted. And I said to you, that gives me so much hope. Because if that can happen in China, imagine what can happen in the rest of the world while we are still free. While we can still make choices like positioning into gold and silver that are outside of the system. So that if they take complete control of the money supply, do you really care? No, you do not, because you have real money. Keep in mind, any talent that you have is barterable. So I'm thinking about it, and on an interview today, they actually, the guy that was interviewing me, I think that was, do you remember which interview? I did a couple today. Oh, I think it was John Williams. Yeah, it was John Williams. Great interview. We'll let you know when that one's out. You want to go see it. But he asked me, well, how do you do that? How do you build a community? Well, part of it is what I'm doing right here. But part of it is all of us coming together and no longer being divided. If you don't know your neighbors, why not knock on a door and introduce yourself? They may or may not, frankly, think like you do, but now at least you know them. Join a community garden. I'm going to come up with a whole bunch of ways. Just was a pretty new, I'm getting it. All right, sometimes maybe I'm a little slower than I should be, but I'm getting it. So just stay tuned, because I care about you guys so much. You are who I work for. You are who I was put on this planet to make a positive impact on. But I can't do it by myself. I need all of you as well. So we will get there. We will do this together. Thrivers is a great place to do it in. And I know, right after this, we're going to be talking about this live in our Thrivers video call that we have every day. Come join us. If you don't like what you see in the community, help us make it better. All over the world, we are not alone. We can come together and make a difference. So I don't even want to give you any reminders, but make sure you subscribe. What a trip. That's what I can tell you. I'm so grateful. Thank you to all of you. You know who you are, the people that I've met along the way that have touched me in a way that I can't even explain it, that have helped me find my voice. Thank you. And until next we meet, please be safe out there. Bye-bye.